What's up guys, Dragonwell here, and today I'm back with another video, this time talking about the returning Pokemon of Crown Tundra. So Crown Tundra came out just a few days ago, we're all pretty hyped. Yeah, and we found out a lot about their move pools and stuff, so I figured, hey, I should probably go over some of the move pool changes that occurred to some of these Pokemon and you know, what they gained, what they lost. Basically cover whether or not they got stronger or weaker compared to their Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon selves. So yeah, here I have three groups. As you can see here, the Pokemon in this group are buffed, and these Pokemon here are weaker than themselves in Gen 7. Basically, you know, you can already see like Blaziken and Salamander, they both lost their Mega Evolution, so obviously they're going to be weaker. And the third group is even. Overall, I think they broke even, I should say. Like, they got a few good stuff, but then they lost a few good stuff that kind of, you know, evens it out between their buffs and their nerfs. So yeah, I mean, let's just hop right into it. So we're going to be going over the buffs first of all. So the first Pokemon, this is going to be in Dex order, Dex number order. So the first Pokemon in this list is Moltres. So Moltres actually gets Scorching Sands now. This is a huge improvement in Moltres' moveset because previously, you know, it ran Fire Blast, Hurricane, maybe Roost, maybe Will-O-Wisp, and there's also some that ran Gracium Z with Solar Beam. And basically, it had no way of touching Heatran, right? In fact, it just let Heatran in, set up rocks, and do whatever, and once Heatran sets up rocks, Moltres becomes pretty much useless. So having Scorching Sands in its moveset allows it to beat Heatran, first of all, which is great. And it's also, you know, Scorching Sands is a very, very good move. It has a 30% chance to burn the target. So it's kind of similar to Scald. It's very, very spammable. There's almost no drawback to just firing off Scorching Sands, unless the opponent switches into a flying type. So yeah, I mean, this is a very, very nice addition for Moltres. The other thing is that Moltres gets access to Max Airstream, obviously. With Hurricane, it's a 140 base power flying type move that doesn't miss. So one of Moltres' big downsides, there's a lot of downsides to Moltres in Generation 7, but Max Airstream basically lets it overcome one of its main weaknesses, which is Hurricane missing. So yeah, Moltres just has a very, very nice Airstream option. And one of the new items that were introduced in this gen, Heavy Duty Boots. Heavy Duty Boots. Okay. Yeah, basically it makes the holder unaffected by hazards. So one of the other main weaknesses of Moltres is that it's very weak to Stealth Rocks. It comes in, it takes 50% from Stealth Rocks, but with Heavy Duty Boots, Moltres is not completely useless against Stealth Rocks. Granted, BSS, Stealth Rocks is not too common. It's not as common as OU, where, you know, almost every game there's Stealth Rocks. But yeah, I mean, it's still ran sometimes on some teams. So Heavy Duty Boots basically lets Moltres not be completely useless whenever the opposing team has a Stealth Rock option. Alright, so up next is Dragonite. So Dragonite, it gained a pretty nice move in Dual Wing Beat. So previously, Dragonite's flying coverage was Fly, right? That was its best flying type move to use. So if you wanted to use Fly, for the most part, you needed to run Fly Z, so that you get to launch a Supersonic Sky Strike, right? Because the problem with Fly is that it's a 2-turn move. Basically, you lose an incredible amount of momentum if you mispredict the Fly. You know, you're going to be locked in. And Fly sucks because you can also miss too. So you basically wasted 2 turns to do 0 damage. Dual Wing Beat, I mean, it obviously can miss as well, but it's not a 2-turn move. In fact, it's the completely opposite. It hits 2 times in 1 turn, which is pretty funny. So it's a spammable flying type move, which is very, very nice. Previously, if you're not running Flynium Z Dragonite, basically you ran Dragon Dance, Earthquake, Outrage, and some type of coverage move. Basically, you did not have Flying Stab on Dragonite, but now it actually has like a secondary stab that's workable, which is pretty huge, right? Like, before you only used Outrage for your stab moves, but now you have a secondary stab move. The other boost, there's no more Hidden Power Ice. So previously, Pokemon like Zapdos checked Dragonite very, very effectively because, you know, Flying Spam was everywhere, so Zapdos was very, very good. And one of the main ways Zapdos stopped Dragonite was through HP Ice. The other thing, it's kind of a little bit more minor because you're not going to be using Inner Focus as much as you are going to be using Multiscale, because Multiscale, if the Pokemon is at full HP, damage taken from attacks is halved. This is a fantastic ability. But if you want, there is a bonus to running Inner Focus in that you can't get intimidated. So starting in this gen, Inner Focus becomes immune to Intimidate attack drops. So if their opponent switches in a Landorus on your Dragonite, they're not going to lower your attack. So yeah, I mean there's not a lot of merit compared to Multiscale, because Multiscale is just that great of an ability. But this is just to note that Inner Focus does have its pretty nice use this gen compared to the last gen, in which it just doesn't flinch, right? Like it's immune to Fake Out, that's about it. This time it's immune to Intimidate as well, so that's a nice plus. Up next is Entei, so we're into Gen 2. So the primary change for Entei is that it gets Extreme Speed as a level up move. This is not a noticeable change for those playing Smogon 6v6, because Extreme Speed Entei was an event move for Gen 5, I believe. Yeah, there was like a shiny Entei event where you can run Extreme Speed. But yeah, in Ultra Sun, like in Gen 7 battle spot singles, like it was banned because in Gen 7 as well you can't use past gen exclusive moves. But now it's a level up move, so Entei has access to Extreme Speed, which is a very, very nice boost. It also gets Flare Blitz, but you probably run Sacred Fire anyway. And ability, you can put Inner Focus as an ability for Entei now, thanks to the hidden ability capsule, right? It changes the ability to the hidden ability. So with Inner Focus, like this is the same with Dragonite, right? It's immune to Intimidate, so you can't switch in Landorus or Gyarados or Salamence to intimidate Entei, because yeah, with Inner Focus, Entei just keeps its attack stat. Yeah, and that's Entei. Like basically no nerfs or no noticeable nerfs. It did lose Toxic, so in Gen 7 some Entei ran sub Toxic. It's basically a stall set, right? You Toxic it and then you just sub Protect a bunch. So losing Toxic is a bit unfortunate, but yeah, I mean overall, with Extreme Speed, like the full attack variant is probably going to be great. It also gets access to Crunch now. It previously did not have access to Crunch, so hitting things like Dragapult, for example, which does resist, it's immune to Extreme Speed and resists Sacred Fire. Crunch is a very, very nice coverage move for Dragapult, so that's very nice. But yeah, like the only downside is that Toxic is now illegal, right? Like you can't run Toxic on Entei anymore. So that's probably like the only downside to Entei. Alright, so now Gen 3, Regirock. So Regirock, it gains Body Press. So Body Press, if you don't know, it uses the defense stat for the attack damage calculation, and Regirock has 200 base defense. So previously Regirock was a pretty bad Pokemon, right? Like Mono Rock is not great. Rock has a lot of common weaknesses that are abused, but thanks to Body Press, like you can just be fully defensive and then still do a significant amount of damage. Regirock is also very nice with, has very nice synergy with Dynamax. Max Rockfall, its main stat max move, sets up Sandstorm, which boosts its special defense stat. So one of the most common ways of taking out Regirock is to attack its weaker special defense side, right, using special attacks. But with Max Rockfall, Regirock is able to cover that very, very nicely. And when its HP is doubled, it's just not going to die. So when trading Dynamax, I think Regirock has a very nice chance of beating a lot of common Dynamax Pokemon, which is something that is worth praising, I guess. It's a nice buff for Regirock, all in all. Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot of noticeable other differences. You can change Clear Body to Sturdy. I mean, it's whichever your team needs, I guess. Sturdy is not going to be useful too often because, well, obviously Regirock has a very decent bulk. It's going to be very rare for Regirock to be brought down to Sturdy on the physical side. I mean, unless you're taking a Vicious Rend from a Dracovish, right? Like that's probably the only physical attack that brings Regirock, kills Regirock in one hit on the physical side. I mean, being immune to Oko moves is nice, but yeah, Clear Body might be more beneficial because you also ignore Max Phantasm defense drops. So one of the other common ways that Regirock might get beaten down with physical attacks is like if stuff like Dragapult or Mimikyu use Max Phantasm to lower Regirock's defense and break through it. But with Clear Body, that's not going to happen. It's just going to stay sturdy as ever, pun intended. So yeah, I mean, it's your choice. Clear Body, Sturdy, they're both pretty decent in my opinion. Alright, so up next is Latios. Latios also applies to this because they basically got the same buffs. They both lost their Mega Evolution because there's no more Mega. Evolving, obviously. The loss of Mega Evolution is not too bad for the Lati twins because, well, for Latios, Latios usually ran like Choice Specs or Choice Scarf or Life Orb. And it didn't really run Mega Evo too much. Latios ran Megas a lot because Mega Latios is just extremely bulky. It takes like 40% from Aegis/Shadow Ball, which is ridiculous. And just Calm Mind sweeps things. But yeah, so no more Mega Evolving for Latios. That's kind of a nerf, I guess. But all in all, like it's not too bad considering what they got in return. So these two moves right here, Aura Sphere and Mystical Fire, are the two main additions to their movesets. So Aura Sphere lets Latios and the Lati twins, both of them gets it, makes the Lati twins able to hit Steel types, right? Because Steel types resist both Psychic and Dragon. And also they finally have a good move to use against their nemesis for 15 years, Tyranitar. In Gen 5, Tyranitar is always there and Pursuit traps them. In Gen 6, it did the same, it Pursuit trapped Latios. And in Gen 7, like Tyranitar was also always switching into Latios as well. So Aura Sphere turns that matchup around in the Lati's favor, obviously. Mystical Fire is another move that lets the Lati twins hit Steel types, right? As similar to Aura Sphere, but this time it's more notable against stuff like Scizor and Ferrothorn. So previously, the Lati twins, mostly Latios, ran HP Fire. And yeah, it was used to, you know, try to hit Ferrothorn, try to hit Scizor. But yeah, so basically Mystical Fire, what this means is, even though there's no more hidden power, Latios and Latias don't really lose out much because they gained Mystical Fire. And Mystical Fire also has a very nice secondary effect. It has a 100% chance to lower the target's special attack. So it's a very, very spammable attack. It's a very nice coverage for the Lati twins. So yeah, I mean, they definitely got out on top. They lose out on Roost, like a lot of Pokemon lost Roost, but that's not too big of a deal considering they still have Recover. Next, Gen 4, Garchomp. So Garchomp is in the buff section. Basically, the main change for Garchomp is this move right here. Scale Shot hits 2 to 5 times and boosts the speed of Garchomp at the cost of the defense stats. So yeah, so finally Garchomp has a way to boost its speed. You know, everyone was excited to give Garchomp Dragon Dance, but yeah, sadly, even in 2020, it's still too early for humanity to have Dragon Dance Garchomp. Unfortunately, it doesn't have Max Airstream. I guess this is another thing that Game Freak thought about when thinking about what to give Garchomp. They made sure that they didn't give it the best move in the game, because Max Airstream Garchomp would have been pretty ridiculous. But yeah, sadly no Dragon Dance on Garchomp, even though they actually gave Dragon Dance to Mega Salamence for whatever reason. But yeah, no to Garchomp. But yeah, Scale Shot is very, very nice. Similar to Dragonite, the removal of HP Ice is also very, very good for Garchomp because, you know, stuff like Zapdos can no longer beat Garchomp effectively. And yeah, like stuff like Blaziken can no longer surprise kill Garchomp with HP Ice, etc, etc. So yeah, I mean, this is the same with Landorus and you know, Salamence, right? Like they all benefit from no more HP Ice, which is a very, very common coverage move. Garchomp did lose out on Toxic though, so like a lot of other Pokemon, it doesn't get access to Toxic anymore. I mean, that doesn't really matter too much because like Garchomp usually runs a full offensive set with, like, you know, Earthquake, Outrage, Rock Tomb, Swords Dance, Fire Fang, etc, etc. It's not too often that you see Toxic on Garchomp. Like, it's usually just like It's toxic if it's more on the defensive kind of team, but that was not too common. And yeah, the other thing that it lost was Mega Evolution, but nobody Mega Evolved Garchomp. Mega Garchomp was weaker than regular Garchomp, or like everyone said that. So yeah, that loss is not too big of a deal. Alright, up next is Regigigas. So this is probably the biggest, what I think is the biggest buff in this generation. So out of all the Pokemon here, I think Regigigas had the biggest buff of them all. And it's just one move that changes this Pokemon completely, and that's Protect. So previously, Regigigas never got Protect. It never got Rest either. So previously, Regigigas was reliant on Thunder Wave and Confuse Ray to try to win turns with Substitute, right? So already that's 3 moves down the hole, and then the last was Return or something, right? And that's all to make, you know, to overcome Slow Start. So if you guys don't know what Slow Start is, basically for 5 turns, the Pokemon's attack and speed are halved, and that's a huge downside. But like if you look at the stats here, it has, you know, cover legendary level stats. It's incredible stats. It's 670 total. But yeah, I mean, the attack is halved and the speed is halved, which is the main downside of Regigigas, right? It's like the main quirk. It's super strong, but it has a terrible ability, and it didn't have Protect. So that's why it was just like, it kept dying before, you know, in surviving 5 turns without Protect is incredibly difficult, unless you got lucky with Confuse Ray and Thunder Wave. So yeah, I mean, Regigigas was, you know, a completely untiered, like garbage, like very, very bottom tier Pokemon. But now it gets Protect. So what this means is that you can actually, you know, if you just Protect every other turn, you're basically having the Slow Start ability for 2 turns. And then after that, after those 2 turns are up, you basically have a 670 base stat Pokemon on the field. It also gets Rest. I don't think Rest is going to be too good on Regigigas, if I'm going to be completely honest. But yeah, I mean, it's just something that's noteworthy because, like, you know, you can just still survive forever with Regigigas now and actually overcome the Slow Start ability. Yeah, so it would be pretty interesting to see how good this thing actually becomes, or you know, if it stays bad. One thing that it lost, this is probably the biggest loss for Regigigas, is the loss of Return, right, or Frustration, whichever one you want. Return and Frustration, it was a 102 base power move, so that was very, very good. But it gained Body Slam in return, right? Like before it didn't get Body Slam, but now it does. So I mean, it's give and take. It also gets Heat Crash as well. So Heat Crash with Regigigas is, you know, huge body. It's going to do 120 base power fire. It's going to be a 120 base power fire type attack against most Pokemon, so that's going to be also very, very nice for Regigigas because, you know, Steel types are going to just come in on its normal attacks, but get completely destroyed by Heat Crash. So yeah, I mean, I think this is the biggest buff of them all because Protect just alleviates a lot of slow starts, like downfall. So you can run Protect, Sub, Body Slam, Heat Crash, and, you know, Protect, Sub your slow start away with leftovers, and then you will be at, like, you know, 60% HP, but you will have a 670 base stat Pokemon that's going to be ravaging the opponent. So this is going to be, I'm pretty excited for Regigigas. Alright, up next is Therian. So this Pokemon is probably like this Pokemon is on the buff list because of its stats mainly. So one of the main things that I looked at was its speed tier. So it has 121 base speed, which is faster than Cinderace. So this is like one of the prime reasons why Therian is in the buff list. I mean, overall, it's probably not going to be as strong as, you know, stuff like Landorus or, you know, Dragapult or Cinderace, but it is still faster than Cinderace. So that's a very, very nice reason to use Therian. It also gains access to Nasty Plot. Previously it was only on Thunderous, but now Tornadus gets it as well. And it has Max Airstream as the option. You know, the combination of Nasty Plot and Max Airstream, there's not going to be a lot of Pokemon that enjoy taking a +2 Max Airstream from something with 110 base special attack. So one of the main downsides of Therian in Generation 7 was definitely Hurricane missing, right? Like, if Hurricane did not miss, Tornadus Therian would have been a fantastic Pokemon. But since it does miss, you need to pair it with Politoed or like some other rain setter so that Hurricane doesn't miss. Or you need to just try to get lucky, which is not often with Tornadus Therian. So, and also, you know, there's a lot of good flying types in Gen 7, such as Salamence, that you can't really justify running Tornadus Therian. But I digress. Tornadus Therian now it actually has a lot of things going for it. So, as mentioned before, Max Airstream alleviates the accuracy, like the shaky accuracy of Hurricane, which covers up probably like the biggest weakness of Tornadus Therian. And obviously being faster than Cinderace. Cinderace is 119 here. Is very, very good. So yeah, that's basically the main reason why Tornadus Therian is in the buffed list. Alright, up next is Landorus Incarnate. So, previously in Generation 7, again, this is something that doesn't apply to OU, because you can run any past gen exclusive stuff. So, Landorus was released as an event in Gen 5, I believe. Sheer Force Landorus. So, Sheer Force is its hidden ability. Basically, it gives us 1.3 times power and then nullifies Life Orb Recoil. It's basically a very, very nice ability. It's way better than Sand Force. So yeah, Sheer Force Landorus I was released in Generation 5, but it wasn't available in 6 and 7, so it was banned, basically. Sheer Force Lando I was not usable in Generation 7. But now, with Crown Tundra, thanks to the hidden ability capsule, you can run Sheer Force Landorus I. So, I mean, that's basically all you need to know about Landorus I. It's a lot stronger than it was in Gen 7. Like, the main downside obviously is that if you're running Landorus I, you can't run Landorus T. And Landorus T is also going to be a very, very strong, noteworthy Pokemon. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how many people actually run Landorus I. Now that you can run Sheer Force. But yeah, it's it's a significant change because we finally can have access to Sheer Force Landorus. Alright, up next, Tapu Fini. So, Tapu Fini is probably the only Tapu that got buffed. I think the other three got nerfed this generation. And the only reason why I think Tapu Fini got buffed is because of Draining Kiss. So, previously, Tapu Fini didn't really have reliable forms of recovery. Like, the main forms of recovery it had previously was, you know, eating a Pinch Berry, right? The Pinch Berry that heals 50% of your HP. Or, you know, just leftovers and just trying to sit there as long as possible with leftovers recovery. Now it gets access to Draining Kiss, so this makes the Calm mindsets a lot more terrifying because if you're a special attacker and then you're trying to beat down Tapu Fini, it's just not going to die. It's just going to Draining Kiss through you, and then it's going to be at +2/+2, and then you're going to have trouble killing it as it Dynamaxes, etc., etc. So yeah, I mean, another form of recovery for Tapu Fini is obviously very, very nice. So yeah, this move alone I think changes Tapu Fini quite a bit. Obviously it's still going to be doing mostly the same stuff, but instead of Moonblast having Draining Kiss, while it's, you know, significantly weaker, the setup Tapu Fini can take a lot of advantage of Draining Kiss because recovering 75% of the damage dealt is a lot. It's actually very, very big. Giga Drain is only 50% and it still heals quite a bit, but Draining Kiss 75%, that's pretty crazy. So yeah, you're gonna get a lot of HP for Tapu Fini, and it's gonna be a lot harder to kill. That's why it's in the buff list. Alright, up next, Pheromosa. So Pheromosa also got slight buffs. It got Close Combat. Previously, its main physical fighting move was High Jump Kick, which is obviously not too reliable, right? Like 90% of the time you're gonna deal a significant amount of damage, but the remaining 10 you're gonna have a very bad time, right? You're gonna lose 50% of your HP. Close Combat doesn't miss, and the downside of Close Combat, lowering the defense and special defense, is not too big of a deal for Pheromosa because Pheromosa's defense stats are abysmal anyway. It's just gonna die to Mimikyu Shadow Sneak anyway. Like, it doesn't really matter, the downsides. Also, another move that Pheromosa got is Triple Axle. So Triple Axle hits 3 times, but doubles in power each time. So at the end of the day, you know, if you hit twice, it's 60 base power, and if you hit 3 times, it's 120 base power Ice type move. In Gen 7, Pheromosa most often ran Ice Beam, so that, you know, Landorus's Intimidate didn't matter, and you can still Ice Beam it and kill it. But with Triple Axle, you can actually just opt to, you know, run fully physical and still deal with Landorus that way with Triple Axle. Provided you hit, of course. Obviously, Triple Axle can miss, unlike Ice Beam. So there's a give and take there. It's just like another option for Pheromosa. You can, if you want to stay safe, I guess Ice Beam is better, but Triple Axle lets you invest fully into the physical side instead of relying on special. If you're fully, I mean, you can run fully special Pheromosa as well. You can run Bug Buzz, Focus Blast, and Ice Beam. But the downside, obviously, is that Focus Blast has a higher miss chance than Triple Axle. So there's a give and take there with Pheromosa, but yeah, Triple Axle is just like another option. That's pretty good. Alright, next up is Takataka. So Takataka got a pretty significant buff, if I can say so myself. It got Body Press, so it's kind of similar to this case with Regirock. Body Press uses the defense stat of the Pokemon in the damage calculation, and Takataka has 211 defense. So, yeah, this thing is gonna hit very, very hard. It also stacks up very well with Beast Boost as well, because you know, it's very hard to. You need to invest a lot into attack and not anything into defense to even come close to getting attack boosts with Beast Boost. Because Beast Boost, if you don't know, it boosts your highest stat. So, you know, if you have more. Okay, so let me just show you. You need to be, I think you need it to be plus attack minus defense, right? Yeah, Lonely. And then you needed to have like, yeah, basically like you needed to be low IVs and max attack in order to boost attack with Beast Boost. But with Body Press, you don't even need to worry about that. Even if you're max, like, you know, max defense, and it just boosts your defense stat, like it doesn't, there's just no downside to it. Because you're just boosting your defense, basically means your Body Press is doing more and more damage. It snowballs with Body Press without losing out on physical bulk, so that's fantastic. It also gets access to Heat Crash, so previously, you know, stuff that resists Gyro Ball, because Gyro Ball from Takataka does a lot of damage as well. Like, you know, it's like Steel types. I guess Body Press also deals with Steel types, but Heat Crash is a nice move to use against, you know, stuff like Ferrothorn or other grass types such as Rillaboom. Yeah, and since Takataka weighs like 800 kilograms, it's gonna do. It's kind of like the Regigigas. It deals 120 base power against almost everything. So yeah, that's a pretty significant buff for Takataka. So those are pretty much the basic Pokemon that I think got buffed compared to Gen 7. Next, let's go look at the Pokemon that were nerfed. So let's just hop right into it. Started off, we have Blaziken. Blaziken lost its Mega Evolution, yes, but that's pretty minor compared to like the other stuff that it lost. It lost High Jump Kick. So previously, High Jump Kick was its main physical attack, right? It has 130 base power, but now it lost it because it's no longer in its level up move pool. It also lost Knockoff, which is you know, like a very spammable coverage option. It's good against, you know, psychic types that try to switch in on a High Jump Kick. You know, you can Swords Dance and just knock off, and then deal significant amounts of damage. It also lost Hidden Power Ice. This is something that Life Orb Blaziken ran, often to surprise kill, you know, Garchomps and Landorus T's. So yeah, it doesn't have that option anymore. Yeah, so it lost 3 pretty noteworthy attacks. So this is like a pretty big downfall for Blaziken. For its main fighting type move, it did get access to close combat though. So that's a pretty nice buff, I guess. It's more reliable than High Jump Kick, but it's slightly weaker. So, you know, your damage calculations might be a little bit off if you've been playing with Blaziken a lot in Generation 7. You're going to be doing a tad less damage, so you got to just keep that in mind. It also gets U-turn now. I mean, this is a pretty minor buff, yes, because Blaziken already had Baton Pass. And Baton Pass is kind of more useful in most cases because you're Baton Passing a speed boost. So, I mean, at least you have the option, right? You can run U-turn or you can run Baton Pass. The benefit of U-turn, obviously, you could break focus stashes, you can break multi-scale for Dragonite, you can break Disguise on Mimikyu, but yeah, usually like Baton Pass is fine. Like Baton Passing speed boosts onto, you know, stuff like Dracovish is very, very good, for example. So yeah, I mean, overall, Blaziken lost way too many things, way too many good things for it to be considered a buff, I think. So overall, I think Blaziken got nerfed. Alright, up next is Salamence. Salamence also lost its Mega Evolution, and honestly, like, that's probably all you need to know about Salamence. Enough to, like, you know, say that it got nerfed. But yeah, so Salamence is no longer the broken Mega Evolution that it was in Gen 7. It lost access to Roost. Roost is now illegal on Salamence. So, I mean, losing Roost is not too big of a deal, I guess, for Salamence, because one of the main reasons why Roost was so broken on Salamence to begin with is because Mega Salamence had ridiculous bulk. You know, with Roost and Dragon Dance, Mega Salamence is able to set up on almost everything, right? Almost everything was like doing less than half, so just Dragon Dance, Roost, 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 Dragon Dance, Sweep. Yeah, so I mean, losing Roost as regular Salamence is not too big of a deal. Obviously, it's still one of the main things that it lost. But on the other hand, it did gain access to 2 flying type moves. So like Dragonite, Salamence did not have good flying type moves. You know, it had Wing Attack, just like Dragonite, or it had Fly. Its main flying type attacks was when it Mega Evolved, and Aerial lets its normal type moves become flying type moves, right? But as normal Salamence, like regular Salamence, it was basically just like Dragonite, a dragon type that was immune to Earthquake, right? Like that's all the flying type did for the Salamence for the most part. But now it gets dual Wing Beat, so it's a spammable flying type move. And also on the special side, if you want to run special Salamence, you can have Hurricane. So Hurricane is a, you know, it's a very powerful special type attack for Salamence. So yeah, I mean, you have a secondary stab for Salamence as well. There's no more Mega Evolutions, but yeah, it did gain secondary stab in another way. But yeah, I mean, overall, the loss of Mega Evolution is just so big for Salamence that I just put it in the nerfed section. Alright, up next is Cresselia. So Cresselia, probably one of the benefits of Cresselia that Cresselia got this generation is that nothing gets toxic, right? Like, previously in Generation 7, one of the main ways to kill Cresselia was either through Mega Gengar, Shadow Ball, or like Hypnosis, Hex, whatever, or through Toxic, right? Toxic stalling Crest, because Crest doesn't really have ways to heal itself from Toxic unless it runs Rest, but nobody really ran Rest Cresselia. You just lose way too much momentum. So yeah, I mean, nothing having Toxic makes Cresselia just a lot harder to kill, but at the same time, Cresselia itself also loses Toxic. So yeah, Cresselia is not able to be Toxic as much anymore, but it also can't Toxic others. So basically it becomes like a stall fest. Nothing kills Cresselia, Cresselia doesn't kill anything. It gets Sword Power, but like this is a new move that it got this generation, but it's not stronger than Psychic unless, you know, you have 2 Calm Mind boosts. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think this is going to be too noteworthy. Like, Cresselia's main attack is probably going to still be Ice Beam anyway, because, you know, Landorus, Garchomp, and Dragapult. So it's going to be, I don't know. I think losing out on Toxic is just too big of a change for Cresselia. I think it's also I also put it in the nerfed section, not only because of it losing Toxic, but also in general, like the metagame is just not nice to Cresselia or any Psychic types. You know, Dragapult is up there in usage, Mimikyu is up there, Cinderace always, you know, almost always uses Max Darkness, you know, from Sucker Punch. It's just not really good to be a Psychic type right now in BSS. So yeah, overall I think Cresselia is weaker than it was in Generation 7. Alright, up next is Thundurus. This applies to both Thundurus and Thundurus Eye. Well, I mean, okay, I'll just cover each of them. So one of its main nerfs is that it lost Toxic. Prankster, Sub-Protect, Toxic Stall was its main set, or it's like its most common set. So without Toxic, basically Thundurus Eye, sorry, not Landers. Thunder's Eye does not have that option to use that anymore. And yeah, it's basically rendered completely useless. Yeah, I mean, all you can do right now with Prankster's Thunder Wave stuff. The other thing that it lost is Hidden Power Ice. So this applies to both Thunderous forms. Hidden Power Ice is one of its main coverage of options. But yeah, it's gone now. So and Thunderous has like a very shallow move pool, I should say. Like it just doesn't really. It has Flash Cannon, I guess, and it has Psychic. But otherwise, like, it doesn't have anything to hit ground types very effectively. So yeah, I mean, losing these two moves is pretty much a big hit for both Thunderous forms. Also, Thunderous is very bad, has very bad synergy with Dynamax, right? It doesn't have any special flying moves, right? So if you're running Thunderous Therian, you can't use special max airstream. You can only use physical max airstream, you know, off of acrobatics. Oh no, it doesn't learn acrobatics. What does it learn? It learns fly. Like, so you use fly, and then yeah, so you use fly for physical max airstream. You can't run special. And the electric one, Max Lightning, you can't get the benefits of electric terrain because you're flying and you're not touching the ground. So yeah, I mean, it has terrible synergy with Dynamax. So yeah, basically Thunderous, it's definitely weaker than it was in Generation 7. So here are the three Tapus up next. Topococo, it's pretty self-explanatory. Yet again, another electric type that loses out from Hidden Power Ice being gone for obvious reasons, just like before. And the other downside is electric terrain. So previously in Generation 7, electric terrain boosted electric type attacks by 1.5, but now that's lowered to 1.3. So yeah, that makes Topococo significantly weaker than it was in Gen 7. One of the main, like, I guess the only buff that Topococo got is that with Dynamax, you can actually run physical Max Lightning, because the thing about Topococo, and that is kind of not too obvious if you don't really know and you just watch people play, is that it actually has higher attack than special attack. So if you Dynamax Topococo and you use Wild Charge, you actually can attack using the higher attack stat of Topococo. And yeah, I say Dynamax because Wild Charge in general is just like a very bad move. You know, base 90 with recoil is a terrible move. You know, Flare Blitz has 120, right? Like, Wild Charge is just such a bad move, but with Dynamax, you know, you get rid of the downsides. You can use a physical Max Lightning, but that's about it. Like, that's the only benefit that Topococo gets. You know, losing out on the electric terrain boost and losing out on HP Ice is just such a heavy hit for Topococo that it's definitely weaker than it was in Generation 7. Similar thing with Tapu Lele. It doesn't really get anything new. It doesn't get Expanding Force to everyone's... I mean, I guess everyone's glad it didn't get Expanding Force, but some people were disappointed. It's the same deal. Psychic Surge, Psychic Terrain boost went lower from 1.5 times to 1.3 times. So it's hitting significantly weaker, and yeah, it's basically nerfed in that sense. Tapuboo, aka Worse Rillaboom, same deal. Grassy Surge, Terrain boost went from 1.5 to 1.3. It doesn't get Grassy Glide, so yeah, it doesn't get Grassy Glide, so why use this over Rillaboom? That's probably like the main question that you need to ask when you put Tapu Bulu on your team, is can I do the same thing but better with Rillaboom? And the answer 90% of the time is going to be yes. So you probably should not run Tapu Bulu, you probably run Rillaboom instead. In terms of buffs, it did get Close Combat and it did get High Horsepower, so that's kind of nice coverage. Close Combat is not too different from Superpower, except that, you know, Rillaboom, no, I keep saying Rillaboom. Tapu Bulu keeps its attack stat. High Horsepower is good to hit Heatran, right? That's about it. Yeah, in terms of overall viability, there's just not, like, it has a main competitor now in Rillaboom. The other two, like, you know, Tapu Lele is competing against Indeedee, and Topococo is competing against Pink Urchin, which are both trash mons. Rillaboom is a very good mon, so Tapu Bulu is probably not going to see the light of day in competitive. So I put it in the nerfed Pokemon list. Alright, so Circuitry is going to follow the same pattern as all the other electric types, losing out on HP Ice. It loses out on Tail Glow as well. It loses out on Psychium Z, so one of the main sets in Generation 7 that Circuitry ran was Z Hypnosis. Basically, it puts the opponent to sleep and boosts circuitry's speed by 1. It can no longer do that because there's no more Z moves. So basically, circuitry lost everything. It didn't gain anything to make up for it either. Yeah, no Tail Glow, no HP Ice, and no Z Hypnosis sweeping options anymore. So yeah, not looking too good for circuitry here. Alright, so that's basically it for the list of nerfed Pokemon. Now we covered the Pokemon who gained some, lost some, and probably broke about even, I should say. First off, we have Zapdos. So Zapdos finally gets a special flying type attack. So previously, Zapdos actually had a Gen 4 tutor move. In Heart Gold Soul Silver, you can actually teach it Air Cutter, which is a trash 55 base power move. Finally, but that's also Gen 4 tutor move, so it's banned in Gen 7 BSS. But finally, we get Hurricane. So basically, it has access to a special max airstream. So that's very, very nice. It finally has a secondary coverage. Previously, if you wanted to use a flying type attack on Zapdos, you had to run Drill Peck or Fly. Obviously, Drill Peck is better, but it's physical, so it's not going to be utilizing Zapdos' main attack stat in special attack. It also gets Rising Voltage, which is it's not too notable. The main difference between Rising Voltage and stuff like Thunderbolt is that Rising Voltage has a max power, max lightning from Rising Voltage is 140 base power, so that's pretty good. If you're running Thunderbolt, then it becomes 130 base power, and in order to have 140 base power max lightning, you need to run Thunder, but Rising Voltage is just like that but better. It loses out on Toxic. So Toxic is probably one of Zapdos' most common moves in Generation 7 because most people run defensive Zapdos because defensive Zapdos is the best set. Yeah, like 50% of Zapdos ran Toxic, but Toxic is no longer here. So losing Toxic is pretty big for Zapdos. It can no longer run defensive effectively. Yeah, you can no longer just Toxic and Roost all stuff. Your main option now has gone from being defensive Zapdos to offensive Zapdos. It also lost Hidden Power Ice, so its matchups against Garchomp, Dragonite, and Landorus T is a lot worse now because you can't hit it with a super powerful Hidden Power Ice. But you also have access to Hurricane now, so it's like there's a pretty delicate balance, I think, between gaining a secondary powerful stab and losing one of its best coverage moves. So all in all, I think it kind of breaks even. Losing Toxic so that it basically lost out on its defensive options is pretty huge. So, I mean, while gaining Hurricane was pretty big, losing Toxic was equally as big. That's why it's in the even slot. Up next is Riku. So Riku also is pretty similar to Zapdos. It gained a very nice coverage move in Scald. So Scald is an option for Riku to hit ground types, right? And it also has a very nice secondary effect that makes it very, very spammable. So yeah, it gets Scald. It also gets Aura Sphere. Aura Sphere is probably not like too noteworthy compared to Scald, but I mean it lets it hit stuff like Tyranitar very well. It lets it hit Heatran very well. Yeah, I mean it's just another coverage move. It's on the same scope as Shadow Ball, I guess, but like yeah. Previously it was available as a Gen 5 event, but now it's a level up move, so yeah, that's great. It lost Hidden Power Ice just like Zapdos, and it also lost Toxic just like Zapdos. Toxic Sub-Stall, Sub-Protect Stall was also a common set for Riku, so without Toxic, that set becomes completely useless. Hidden Power Ice obviously is a very nice option for Riku to hit stuff like Landorus T, Garchomp, and Dragonite and Salamence. It doesn't have that anymore, so yeah, I mean it lost a lot, but it also gained a lot. We'll see how well Riku fares, but overall I just put it in the even because it lost a lot and gained a lot. Up next is Heatran. So Heatran gained Scorching Sands. I mean previously it had Earth Power as a pretty nice, ground type special attack, but Scorching Sands has the secondary 30% chance to burn the target, which means it's very, very spammable, as everyone knows with Scald. It also gains Body Press, so Body Press is something that it works pretty nicely with Heatran. It also gets Iron Defense as well, so you can pair it with that. It lets it hit stuff like Chansey or Blissey that comes in to try to take special attacks from Heatran, so Body Press will still do a lot to them. So it becomes a very, very nice stall breaker in that sense. It loses Toxic, so Toxic is one of the main ways that Heatran dealt with more defensive Pokemon in the past. So losing out on Toxic it's gonna be, it took a pretty big hit. Toxic was pretty common on Heatran for its more stall focused sets, you know, like the Sub Protect Toxic Stalls set. So that is no longer usable because it doesn't have Toxic anymore. So yeah, it, like the other two, losing out on Toxic was pretty big. Last but not least, we have Landorus Therian. Its main buff is that it gets access to Max Airstream now. It doesn't get any new flying type attack, but with Max Airstream, you can just put Fly and then click Max Airstream 3 times. And it means very, very powerful. People have seen, you know, Supersonic Sky Strike Landorus in Gen 7, and that was very, very scary. Now we have Max Airstream so that, you know, stuff that resists Earthquake, like grass types or bug types, get completely destroyed by Max Airstream. Yeah, I mean, it just has a very nice synergy with Dynamax. There's no more HP Ice as well, like I mentioned earlier. So Landorus Therian is just gonna, you know, it has a great matchup against almost everything. Yeah, and you know, Max Quake boosting its special defense is also a very, very nice plus. On the downside though, it does lose Knockoff, so Knockoff was one of its main coverage options because it's very, very spammable, because it has a very nice secondary effect. Yeah, and the other downside right now in this generation is Intimidate. So Intimidate got nerfed a little bit in this generation. It's still a very, very nice ability, don't get me wrong. But there's a few abilities such as Oblivious and Inner Focus and Scrappy that aren't affected by Intimidate. So, you know, Pokemon like Mamoswine and Lucario, for example, right? They're not affected by Intimidate. So, yeah, I mean, it needs to watch out for physical attackers with those abilities. Also, there's a few new additions that are pretty meta relevant that have Defiant, such as, you know, Galarian Zapdos and Braviary that also has Defiant for Landorus T. So yeah, all in all, like Intimidate becomes a lot more difficult to use in this generation compared to Generation 7. But yeah, it gained a lot with Dynamax. You know, Max Airstream is the best move in the game, and it's a very, very strong user of it at that. So it gained a lot, it lost a lot as well. So that's basically why I put it in the Pokemon that broke even with its new move pool and loss of old move pools. So yeah, I mean, that pretty much covers it. I mean, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.